stupid, but around some sort of where you have their emotions attached to the partner relationship. And could we put them in this, you know, this basket here, the bastard basket. The partner relationship, and that what and so be able to, when emotions come up that are really connected to that you can park them here.
Is the woman going to be able to make any decisions about her kids though with a tainted view without dealing with those emotions first? Like, is she going to be able to make decisions around Kathy if she's so angry and frustrated and hurt and jealous without discussing that first? Would she be kind of making decisions with a tainted view?
What's happening now?
Well, that she has
So
to.
the goal is to try and unpack that.
So what you could do is have them doing mediation at the same time, encourage her to seek some counselling to support her.
I think
through the process.
that's good.
So ideally,
For her to have counselling.
Yeah, so she's
I think
supported through in intake. You've got all these emotions. It's understandable. It's not surprising. Blah, blah, blah. Sue, I think. Supported through the process. Have her working with someone where she can work through those emotions at an intense level, and then be able to find some strategy where she can go, okay, I've got all of this stuff, it's been named and acknowledged, it's not being ignored.
Some ownership.
Yeah, even getting them to be able to acknowledge what the other person has said they feel.
Well, what if they
Just
don't
that
want to?
acknowledgement.
What if they're really not wanting to do that?
To do mediation?
No, to discuss that.
Then don't worry. Oh, to discuss it in counselling.
Yeah, no, in the mediation.
If it's presenting in the room, you're going to have to name it if it's there. Although resentment and
those feelings
otherwise
aside.
nothing's going to go in.
yeah, well, I guess it just depends.
Exactly.
So I guess what you're saying is ideally Sue should have some counselling because she's probably in shock. She has to try and wrap her head around all of this and sort of get to a place where she can deal with it. So ideally she'd have counselling. If that didn't happen for whatever reason, maybe to some extent there needs to be some acknowledgement of this being an issue in the mediation.
I think that's a good idea.
Absolutely.
Even if it was just a discussion about, you know, it could be about, well, it's been difficult. You know, what's it been like for you, Sue? And she could say it's been terrible and difficult and blah, blah, blah.
Even hearing that could be important.
Donna, could you almost get an agreement, like, I mean, a sense of, not that you want to do it in the mediation, so would it be helpful for both of you to, in some way, have a conversation around the end of the, you know, like that stuff, but don't worry. No. I'd only be doing it if it was post-separation counselling.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it could go well and it could go
Yeah.
badly.
Yeah,
It could go
it
really
could go
well.
either way.
Because he might say, yes,
Could go
I
really
think
badly.
actually it would be good for us to talk about, I feel like I need to share some stuff with her around it. She says, yes, that's something we do need to do. Then they look at, where could you do that? You know, is that in a facilitated process? How could that happen? And that's part of their agreement. They've agreed to go to blah, blah. I don't know.
And I guess too, we've got this issue with the children being upset.
Yeah.
So it could also be connected with the children.
And they know about this somehow.
Yeah,
so
that
that
was my main
conversation
concern,
happens.
Yeah.
that the children are so aware of
What's
the
happening
situation.
and that they don't want to spend time with him because of her. So obviously that's been communicated from mum,
Yeah.
which is an issue.
Which I find.
Yeah.
And that's obviously hurtful to dad for him to hear from mum. Your
Although
kids don't want to
sometimes
see
children
you.
pick up on these sort of things.
Oh, they do.
But to know that I don't want to spend time with his new girlfriend because he left the family to be with you.
I don't believe
At how old?
not at the age 11 and 9.
That's what she's saying to him. They don't want to spend
Come on.
time with you. because
Okay, so I guess we're generally saying this sort of stuff about the emotions has to be acknowledged in some way. Ideally, and that's what our intake is for, to try and unpack this. Ideally, Sue would go to counselling before the mediation. If for whatever reason she can't, maybe there has to be some sort of discussions, but you know, that sort of could go well, could not go well, could go well in that if he says, oh, you know, I'm terribly sorry and I'm feeling terrible about this, and then there's all this, you know, that'll make her feel better and that'll go really well, but it could go really badly and you'll say you're a terrible wife and I left you because you made me miserable. And so we sort of want to contain that in a way.
Yeah, and I try and do a shift from the emotions or to a child focus, so that it's looking at, there's all these high emotions. The children are also experiencing emotions. How can you support them when you've got this stuff sitting there for you? So that's sort of, not actually saying, that sense of how do we, all that energy, how can you bring some of it to here to support? So their focus comes away from their stuff to the kids' stuff, perhaps their needs emotionally.
Because for a short term, he may just, thinking ahead, he might be prepared to agree to something with the kids without her being there in the short term.
Yeah.
If he is someone that's worried about his children and thinks that
Yep.
I want to sort of mend the relationship with them first and then introduce her further down the track. So
We have child consultants here too, and I think this would be a good one to use a child consultant, because I think that they could either work with the children and sometimes feed stuff back, or simply just go in and talk about generally about child development and how they manage these sorts of losses and ruptures, and so that could be useful too.
so when you say you've got child consultants, how would you use them?
Well, it depends. We can use a child consultant to actually meet with the children.
Right.
And then the children let them know if there's anything they're willing to share with the parents. They don't share it, the child consultant shares it. So it may be they've done bear cards, the feeling cards, and they've agreed, yes, I'm happy for you to show mum and dad that my feeling card around Kathy and my feeling card around this was these ones. Or they might say there's nothing that they want to share. So if there's something they want to share, that can be very powerful, and I think that would be really powerful for both Sue and whatever his name is. Not Bastard, the other one. No.
So would that be something you do before you get them together for a mediation? You might get the children to talk to the child consultant?
Possibly. Yeah.
Because then you might have a bit of insight into the children before.
Yeah. And the other way is sometimes they don't actually even meet with the kids, like the parents don't want the kids met with, the kids aren't wanting to do it, so the child consultant just comes in as a child's voice that's an outsider, not the mediator, but a child's voice, and gives a bit of psycho-ed and a bit of info. And I think that could be really useful here too, helping them shift to a child focus.
Because do you think because they haven't spoken to each other for so long and Sue's been the one with the kids, like how much is Ken going to think is really coming from the children and how much is coming from Sue's opinion of him? Like Tyler said, if they don't want to see him because that this girl's, kind of, if he hasn't spoken to them, then everything that how they're feeling is brought from one party, the mediator and the other parent doesn't really know how.
That's right. We as a mediator probably can't get much of a handle on that unless something like this happens. But no matter where it's coming from, they're obviously going to be upset about everything, aren't they? And they need some support. So
Would you ever do any sort of psycho-ed around sort of loyalty conflicts with the kids in this sort of situation that may help him or both of them? I don't know. Maybe that's a child consultant as well.
yeah, probably for the child consultant possibly. I guess for us as mediators with parents, that we can say, separation's hard for children. They're going to be, it's going to be stressful for them. So it doesn't really matter where the information's come from, does it? It obviously does to the parents,
Yes.
particularly to him, but often as mediators we don't really know the ins and outs of that. And even if a mother's not directly talking to children, often they overhear things. Mother's on the phone, all that sort of stuff.
Well, they say that she's upset.
Yeah. Or they hear her on the phone talking about that bee that he's shacked up with and all that sort of stuff. Any other causes of conflict then?
I think it's making me think more having this type of conversation as well, but there could definitely be some value laden conflict, a little bit more than what we talked about as well. because, you know, he spent, 15 hours a day out of the home, because if he left home at 7:30 and didn't get home till 8 o'clock at night, he wants Kathy to change her working arrangements to look after the children. He's not changing his working arrangements. So there could be that value-laden conflict, and because also she spends a lot of time, she works at their school, she works part-time, she works school hours. So is it going to be that sort of conflict of value in parenting styles as well for the week on, week off?
Right.
And gender roles in family.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even say whether the children know Kathy.
It does, it says they've never met her.
Oh, okay, so that this person's just gonna start.
It's not uncommon.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon, unfortunately, for
Can you
children.
tell she's going to
Is
play
it?
Happy Family?
No.
No, well, I guess it's not uncommon sometimes for parents to want their time, but to want their time to be
With someone else.
organised by someone else, for example, their parents or a partner or daycare centres or whatever.
And just about child support.
So values about parenting styles, gender roles, any other value conflicts? Food and
What were you gonna say?
Oh yeah, that
Healthy,
was
non-healthy.
just like their views on their health.
Medical,
there's-
medical.
Yeah.
medical and health.
Yeah,
There's structure as well,
Health.
there's living arrangements,
Health.
living distance,
Oh, yes, an hour apart.
Oh, yeah.
How are they going to go to the same school?
and that's
structure.
not during peak hour traffic. And school, before and after school is arranged, with peak hour
And the
traffic.
impact on
They
the
go to
kids
school
being
near
in the
her
car
house,
40
he
hours a
wants them
day.
to be
Yeah.
while he's at work.
Okay, so there's that structural issue with how far apart they live from each other and the traffic and the time it's going to take to go back and forward.
I actually
We've just
thought
sort of been looking at
communication.
arbitrator for this one. It'd be much easier. This one I could arbitrate, no problem.
It's got too many-
Got some good ideas.
Too many
Communication
conflicts.
though, sorry, communication is the big one for me.
Communication.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
really
because he
intertwined with
didn't
emotions.
communicate with her when he left the marriage. He's not really,
But I feel like she didn't either, they both
Yeah.
didn't communicate with each other.
Since he's left, she won't speak to them.
She wants
Yeah.
to go.
So once again, using that communication to a child focus, so actually, I want to know what sort of communication have they had. She hasn't answered these calls, but has she texted? Have they emailed?
Yeah.
So just explore what it has looked like, and has it been working for them, and has it been working for their parenting? Do you know what I mean? Like,
What if
what's,
they say we've had nothing?
then what's
She
the-
said, I can't deal with him, I'm so angry, I haven't answered anything, and he says, I tried to
Yeah.
ring her and text her, she won't reply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I try and shift that to a child focus again of what is the impact of that total non-communication on the children and on your parents.
Okay.
So I try and take them
So
there.
get away from the relationship.
Yeah, because the relationship's so raw, so current, like
Yeah, I agree.
it's 2 months ago. Well, for him it's not, because he's been there for 12 months, so he's been emotionally distant for some time, but she hasn't, so I've been trying to keep them out of that relationship.
Okay, so is it that in the intake you'd start saying, well, what's going to be the impact on your
Yep.
kids? There's
Yep.
no communication.
Yeah.
So we start
Yep.
doing this in intake.
Because I think you could get her, you could help her shift some stuff if she can see that her emotions around him and the affair can be impacting negatively on her, because she really values her parenting, I'm getting. So you could use that in a positive way to help her focus there, and that might help her let go or make some shifts. It's just my idea.
Could
Look,
you
I've got them in the room, I probably want to slap them, but it's not allowed. Can you as an arbitrator? No, I can't slap them either.
You could mentally slap them.
Yeah, I'm like that
As a
element.
mediator.
I'm good at that.
You can do a lot of in here,
I like
thinking,
that.
oh God, this is so
Mental
annoying,
slap.
and if he says that one more time, and
Yeah.
why is she saying that, and then you have to be nice to them and
Yeah.
independent.
That's why working on the phone's good, because they can't actually see you going, oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay, so have we covered everything?
Right.
Any other
Rolling your
conflicts?
I thought maybe a history, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit of history just around. I thought he's never taken it seriously, the diabetic. So
That's
around
the
health
one.
concerns.
That's the one.
That was really the history where I thought it might come up. And they frequently argued about that.
He kind of minimises that.
Yeah. So that would be.
Okay, so one of the main strategies you've identified so far is using the intake sessions to get some more information about all this stuff and sort of work out, because you're thinking quite strategically about what to do before you get them together in a mediation and what needs to happen for them to be ready to mediate, and also about trying to shift some of it into focusing on their children for the mediation.
Because I think that mediation preparation can be so beneficial and useful.
What about people that want to mediate quickly though?
Slow them down. Haven't got any appointments. That's not hard here.
They ask if private mediation resolution to this because they want it done and dusted within 2 weeks. And that's not a lot of time to, if two people are working, to go to a family consultation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I guess in practice, if they've got money, they can mediate earlier. They cannot do all of these things we're recommending. And in practice too,
But it may be better for them, even if they have money, for the mediation to be more successful and convince them that these things help.
yeah, well, definitely you can recommend things. We can't make them do it, can we? And I guess on the one hand, even if someone goes to court, it'll take a while for them to get their case in court, but they can run off and file an application. So that's something that might be in the background too. But we can use the intake, as you were saying, to sort of try and give them some ideas, and also what they need to do and what they need to think about before they come back. So I guess that's why thinking about this sort of stuff, even though it's quite theoretical, can be helpful in helping us plan. The other thing that was there, and remember, I should have put this up about, there was a data information. Is there a data information conflict here? Is there something that he's got wrong about the law?
He thinks that it's, he read it in the Courier Mail.
Not that long ago, there was, a year ago, there was an article about
So misinformation.
being detrimental for the non-primary caregiver to have overnight visits or something like that.
Because
Saying
it was
it's detrimental, and
detrimental.
then yes, and then so then all of a sudden there's all these people ringing up saying it was going to, I don't want to say cause brain damage, but it was like
Going to psychologically damage.
going to psychologically damaged children, and so all of a sudden we had this big influx of people ringing and saying, I don't want to send my children for overnight visits, it's going to psychologically damage them. And
Oh, that might have come from that research about attachment and shared care for very young children.
that like a year or
There are some recommendations, for very young children, if they've had a primary carer,
Yeah.
that they not go overnight until they're a bit older. It might have come from
which
that.
I agree
You're not
with.
allowed to
That was
say
the way
that,
this
though.
article was written, that was really like it 100% will cause your child.
Yeah, the Courier Mail as well. Or the Gold Coast Bulletin.
Yeah, if they can. If they can get legal advice. I guess for parenting, they don't have to get legal advice, but it can make them understand things more. And I guess it's important that they get good legal advice from someone that knows what they're talking about.
It's not going to know the best thing for your child necessarily, so it's more the stuff that's on the road, which is about what Rose says about parenting and
What's Bruce?
family relationships online. It's
Oh,
a database
okay.
that everybody uses.
Would it be more
And it's
useful
got
for
things
parents
about
to hear
children,
from a
parenting,
lawyer that
separation, and sort of stuff.
equal responsibility will be equal shared than it is
So that's our job to say that.
Yeah, I think with parenting cases, they don't have to get legal advice unless there's particular issues. Say if there's a relocation issue, something like that, it might help.
Everybody should see a lawyer before they go.
Sorry, what was
Michael Lynch will tell you that everybody should go. He's a lawyer.
And is Michael Lynch on something? Is he?
He's a legal practice.
Yes, maybe that we would.
No, we wouldn't be
We would
referring to
revert to
it.
him.
No, I've heard of it. But Michael's a lawyer who's,
Oh, but he's not in the media.
no. But you see lots of stuff out there.
Yeah.
He's got- he goes to association meetings.
Yeah, the ACA.
The ACA, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah. He'll always tell you that everybody should see a lawyer first.
And that's where we get people ring up say, I've got a letter from my husband's lawyer that says I have to hand over my kids this Saturday. You know, it's just like bullying, so that's where like they get legal advice. But that's what a lot of lawyers will do, they'll
Yes.
just send out a
Yes.
threatening letter that says,
You must.
you know, you must hand over the kids this weekend, blah, blah, blah. You get people ringing up in distress because they've got a lawyer, you know, out of partners, lawyers that just,
Oh, right, we didn't.
yeah.
All they have to do is grab the
Yeah, it's
full custody.
Yeah, it's so
Yes.
So you people get quite a lot of, I hadn't sort of realised.
It's like limbo.
All the time.
Session one morning, seriously.
Come and play now.
Come and play, come and listen in. I'm sure you'll be allowed to, we're just gonna keep this on confidentiality, it won't be an issue. But it would be good for you to do that. Because we're the people dealing with kids and clients. Talk to our legal team probably first. And, you know, tell the client that we're gonna send, like, what we talked about today, we'll send to our legal team, is that okay, get permission, because that saves them time, so the legal team can read what we've written, then they can go into sort of more, I guess, provide them an answer instead of having to go through the detail again and just clarifying what they need to.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, well, I guess when you're dealing with these people, you can certainly ask them to get legal advice. I don't know if before parenting mediation they have to have legal advice. I guess really all they need to know, it would help for them to know things about parental responsibility, I guess, if they want to put that in their agreement. But that's quite sort of, that's not advice, that's really information about what parental responsibility is.
And same with the what they need to discuss with the other parent and what they don't.
Yes. So just giving information about terms and what they mean, that's not legal advice, that's just information. Although I guess you just have to feel confident that you're getting it right when you give that information to them. But legal advice would be, if you go to court, the judge might give you this sort of outcome, or but just telling them about, the court talks about best interests and has a list of best interest factors. That's legal information, I think.
Yeah, then that's our general rule of thumb.
So this, you
And
could,
most of the guys send them a link to share the care as well as the document about parenting plans, so that they have in their mind the things that they need to consider before they go to mediation, so that's a standard. And what is it, yeah.
I think if there's more technical things, maybe they need legal advice. If
Yeah.
someone's wanting to move a considerable
Yeah.
distance, for example, yeah, like relocation, obviously if there's any threats of abduction or, I guess sometimes people might benefit from advice if people have got issues about schooling and stuff, but that's really just parental responsibility. So in looking at all of this, I guess we've identified a whole lot of stuff that we can recommend, particularly the counselling. We can't make people do that. Often, and this is probably a blanket statement, sometimes women are more into counselling than men. Not always though, for the men in the room.
Yeah, no, it's true. I'd have more in private practice, I'd have way more female clients than male.
Oh, right. And not meaning that some men don't go to counselling, because we know that they do, and it can be really helpful. But I know some of the people that I've dealt with, if you say anything about counselling, some people have a real, very strong reaction in that I don't need that. that's about my psychological, you know, you're sort of inferring that I've got problems, so it's not, so they sort of take it in the wrong way.
Yeah. Tell them every time you get that, she's psycho. Yeah.
She's bipolar.
Yeah.
Bipolar, yeah, she's like bipolar.
Bipolar.
Yeah, so that's also interesting to hear about all these different issues that you get on the phones, because a lot of them are linked to legal sorts of stuff, aren't they? Like, for example, a letter demanding
Oh, yeah.
that someone hand over the children isn't like a legal order or anything, it's just a
No.
letter.
It's just a letter.
Yes.
Very
Intimidation tool.
Yes. Yeah, and I guess that's something, you know, when we're teaching people to be lawyers, and they've probably forgotten it by the time they get out to be lawyers, is about the tone that you use in your letters, because it can really upset people when they get a letter from a lawyer that's got a really nasty, even particularly that initial offer letter. You know, if someone's separated and they get an initial letter about property settlement, or they get an initial letter about arrangements for children, the tone of that letter, and if it's really aggressive and not very nice, and can really upset people and really start the conflict. Whereas, and I guess just getting a letter from a lawyer is probably not particularly
No.
pleasant, but the way that you communicate things can really impact on all of that. So we do talk to our law students about all of that, but I'm sure too by the time they get out into practice and they've got people that they're working
Tactical
for.
as well. I'm sure the lawyer wanted to scare the other person to give the child.
Yeah, well that's right, that is a tactic to get something happening too, isn't it?
As a lawyer on letterhead, that's right.
And I guess that's the thing to think about too when we're assessing, and we get onto that in our intake, when we're assessing whether matters are suitable for mediation and when they're suitable and when people might be ready to mediate. We do have to think about what the alternatives are for them. You know, do they have alternatives? Can they afford lawyers? If they can't mediate, how are they going to work stuff out? Because particularly with children, generally stuff has to be worked out for children in some way. So it's a matter of what's the most appropriate way. Okay, well that's all I wanted to say about conflict. Did anyone have any questions? Because we've come to the end of our...
Don't hide your
Celebrating
It's
the
quite
day.
okay to be happy.
Yeah, it's Friday, come on.
Well, thank you for all your time and attention today. You have been a very lovely group of people to spend the day with.
Friday.